but also the parliamentary candidate for the NDC in the Tema Central constituency, and of course our political scientist who shared his thought with us. About 3 years ago, I sat down with a man who was, I guess, very close to former President Rawlings. Still very difficult to say because, he was very close to him. And I didn't know that 3 years on, former President Rawlings would pass, and I'll be playing back this conversation. We actually spoke in the former president's office in his compound, and he shared extensive knowledge about the man that he called his friend. Here's a conversation with a former defense minister and member of parliament for Nandom, Mr. Benjamin Kumbuor, 3 years ago. Dr. Kumbuor, how long have you known Mr. Rollins for?
Well, I'll say since the late 70s, particularly in 1978.
And what are the early memories of your relationship?
Well, I'll say it was a very fortuitous one. We happened to be playing football in the local park in Laura then. Now that district is Jirapa, a separate district, Nandom, Lambuse, but all that used to be part of the Laura district. And it coincided with the change of currency by the Akufo administration. He had just taken over as head of state. And so a helicopter was coming to land with the new currency for them to put in the commercial banks. Of course, they stopped us from playing our football. And of course, we saw a very young, slim pilot, fair-colored, who came out. So we walked up to him, myself, Dr. Babandebe, who is now in Kenya, and Dr. Francis Bawana, who is now the MP for Jirapa. Of course, sometimes when I look back at it, I ask, was it to let them know that we were the guys in town, or it was just out of sheer curiosity? And when we went, we greeted him and just started a chat. And he was quite receptive. And what we noticed was that he looked at the three of us very, very intensely. And we became friends. After that, the crew came back and then they flew. I'm sure they went to another bank to go and leave their money. Since then, we exchanged addresses. We've been corresponding. So June 4th for us came as something that dates back to that relationship with so much nostalgia. And it is not surprising that the three of us were also the three musketeers who were leading cadets on June 4th in Laura at that particular time. So these are some of the circumstances under which we met.
So as friends with Mr. Rollins, even in those early times, what were you seen doing together?
For instance, we also enjoyed visiting him at the Air Force Mess. Once in a while, where he had a salary, he made quite a few pints of bubra available to us. But something that was unique at that time, anytime we went, anytime he bought us drink, I never saw him drink. The only time I saw him drink was Coke. And that we were very surprised at that particular time. Of course, later in life, perhaps he was. But I guess that the exigencies of flying time, hours and things, which is one of the very, very disciplinary issues about flying, perhaps was at play. And so, yes, we had our social relationship as well. What is unique about him is that many people might not like him politically, but as a human being, at a personal level, when you get close to him, he's a fantastic person.
What is that one thing that you wish all of us knew about him that most of us unfortunately don't?
See, he has a very strong sense for humanity. Very, very strong one. And secondly, that love for humanity is one that also pushed him into a quest for social justice. And he's very, very passionate about it. For instance, one of the things you will notice about him is if you were to see a man shout at a lady in public, you can see his reaction. It becomes instantaneous.
So he's a total gentleman.
Precisely. So when you see that about him, it gets translated into politics and get lost. So people are looking at the hardcore political activities as against what innately perhaps translated into his political activities.
And then he became president.
Yes.
2 times.
Yes.
How close were you still?
even at this point?
Very interesting. I remember any time I was then practicing as a lawyer in Bolga. He used to fly. We took very interesting pictures together. We ate together. Sometimes he left the residency, came just perhaps with one bodyguard to where I was staying. We sat down and talked almost the whole day.
What were you guys talking about then?
Just about our society. Particularly if you see the transition from June 4 to the PNDC period. He used to feel passionate, and sometimes he was not too happy about some of the developments. And one of the interesting things that I noticed was the extension of electrification to the north. One evening, as he keeps saying, he was telling me that, look, Ben, you know your uncles taught me how to fly. Group Captain Dele and the other one who crashed in a helicopter in 1960 in the Dodowa forest. So he felt passionate about it and thought that, look, he would have to get electricity to come to the north. Possibly these people would have been some of the best astronauts if they had those type of advantage. Secondly, the human sense was that he says, look, when I see my own children grow up, it's not that they are naturally more intelligent than children growing up in this environment, but it's just because they have this head start. And he wished that all the facilities that gives every child a head start ought to be spread across this country. We talked about this, and to be honest with him at that time, I didn't foresee electricity getting anywhere nearer the north. The second thing was this communication thing that we started. I too didn't believe I would see a black and white, I would see a television, color television in my lifetime. But I went to the UK, and when I returned, I went to Bolga, and I was driving to Nandom. Then I stopped over to greet a Catholic priest. Then as I sat in the hall, I saw color television, and I was really shocked. They said, oh, it's been there for over a year. So some of these developments were things he was passionate about, because as modern gadgets, it makes life a bit more comfortable than it would be. And he had a very, very strong sense of these things.
Has it changed over the years?
I would say yes and no. For instance, age by itself gets you to change. Physically, your look, agility would be different. But mentally, I do not think he has changed very much. Perhaps being a president in a civilian capacity would have forced him, and I could see the difficulty at that time when he became the first president in the Fourth Republic. The difficulty of having to live the military fatigue, sometimes having to wear some suits. And I remember one of the defining moments, two of them, was when he went to the UK, and it was about the Buckingham Palace visit. And of course, everybody expects that to be in Buckingham Palace, you must be seen in a tailcoat and funny, funny things. And I'm sure those who were there at that time will tell how he looked at those coats and just shook his head, put on his long sleeve and his smoke. And it became the icon for most Ghanaians and even Africans who wants to look traditional beyond the Nigerians who had always portrayed that. And so that for me was quite a significant shift. Of course, I know he would like to wear his tracksuit and perhaps jog and move around, ride motors around and things like that. Definitely you can do that in a presidential situation. And yet you can see some of those passions in him.
Is he a rebel?
Well, people would always say it depends on, see, being a rebel is seen as something pejorative or negative. Even when you say you are a philosophical anarchist, people begin to wonder what type of person. I can give you an example. I had taken one of the speed trains from Covent, Birmingham, and I was going to Edinburgh. And I had a book, The Anarchist, which I was reading, and this lady was sitting next to me, fairly grown-up lady. As I went to the gents and came back, I found that the lady had moved to sit and face me because there was a vacant seat. And he kept looking at the book intensely. And he asked me that, are you an anarchist? I said, yes. He said, oh no, I'm not sure the world is ready for this. And I said, oh, but anarchism has nothing to do with violence and those things. So when you say a rebel, he is a rebel against a decadent society. So I don't know whether it is the society that is the rebel or he is the rebel. Because you cannot get him to live with a society that is decaying, and as he keeps saying, where the moral fiber of the society is degenerating to a very high level. So depending on which side of the divide you stand, you cannot tell who is the rebel. If the society is a rebel, he will be a rebel against that rebel society. If the society is what he approximates, I do not think he will be seen as a rebel.
Is he happy to be 10 and 70?
I'm sure every human being would be, because given the type of lifespan, like I keep telling people that, well, some of us might look relatively young, but just because you've been involved in intense political activity since the late 70s, you see yourself like somebody who is 100 years old. So I can imagine what it means for him, who has been here so state twice, and all the stress and things that go with it. Not many people after public office at that high level are able to reach 70.
Would he want to be president again in Ghana?
Well, I'm sure he can answer that question. But what is important is that there are many of these offices that when you look at them from the outside, they might look so pleasant. You wake up one day and you are #1 man in the country and everybody. But internally, you wish you could live another life. The other side of it is that you also still always have the passion that, look, if I had the opportunity for 1 week, 2 weeks, this galamsey nonsense will end. I mean, some of those moments do come to him from time to time.
Yeah.
And when he sees reversals of some of the gains that have been made over the years, in terms of how our society was beginning to set up, and to realize that, look, you can't get away with impunity, you can't get away with malfeasance of many kinds, because there will always be a day of reckoning. Today, we are looking back and it's like there was no yesterday, and that yesterday might not come again tomorrow. But when you look at social processes and forces, they work differently. Never assume that what took place on June 4th, 31st December might never occur again if the objective and subjective conditions become present. The reality about it is that it is the conditions that determine and that produces the one who leads at that particular time. So leaders are products of their time, as they always say. So yes, you can always see that these reversals, as we see in some circumstances, are heart-wrenching. And if you listen to him often, when he says, look, we shot generals, or generals paid the highest price for things that you might call a toe cut as compared to what people perceive to be going on in present times. And those things can really be heart-wrenching, because you look back at it, the question you ask is, was it worth it? But you are dealing with the times. Today, you might look at them as extreme measures, but the exigencies of June 4th and 31st December, the political environment at that time, there was no other option except a worse option. If June 4th had delayed, I believe, another year, we would have sunk like most of the African countries that sank and never recovered.
What's your perfect birthday gift?
For him.
For him, 70 years.
That will be a very, very personal one.
I knew you'd say that.
Yes, because
so I
some of the gifts between the two of us sometimes are very passionate ones.
What's your message? Well, what's your message on a birthday like this to him?
Well, he's done his best over the years. He certainly cannot do it all. We only wish that that vision that he had in terms of creating a more egalitarian society, as it were, that vision finds expression many, many years after him. So we wish him well and hope that he would have a deserved rest after some time.
We're still remembering the former President Jerry John Rawlings. Let's cross over now to Benjamin Akakpo, who is live from the office of the former president here in Accra. Ben, tell us what you can report this morning. Hello, Ben. If you can hear me, tell us what you can report. Ben, what can you report? Office of the former President John Rawlings, Benjamin Akakpo, is in that vicinity. He would tell us what's happening there. Yesterday, we know quite a number of people had gone there to commiserate with the family. Ben would tell us what's happening this morning when he joins us. You're still watching the AM show. We're still remembering the former President John Rawlings, who passed on yesterday in the morning at the Kolibu Teaching Hospital. We've had a lot of conversations about who the man was. I had an interview some 3 years ago with a very close friend of the former president, Mr. Benjamin Kumbuor, who told us a whole lot about the former president. At the time, he was just turning 70. But we also heard from A.B. Bright, convener of the June 4 anniversary lectures, a woman who was also pretty close to the former president, and some political analysis with Dr. Amache Boateng on what the man has left behind, what we should remember him for. And as we all link him to this Fourth Republic, he explained what it all means, where we had come from till this point. We know that the president, Akufo-Addo, has declared 7 days mourning. Effective today, all flags are flying at half-mast. Let's link up with Benjamin Akakpo, who's from reporting from the office of the former president in that community. Ben, tell us what you can report for us this morning.
Yeah, at what has served for decades as his office. And there's a heavy security presence right from the connection leading here to the other stretch on the main road. A lot of soldiers you would see around. There's a heavy security presence, and it's a no-nonsense sort of attitude we're getting this morning. Now, the bit is this. I interacted earlier with some of the soldiers trying to find out which dignitaries, personalities may have come into the premises today. They were tight-lipped about it. I also made inquiries about whether there was going to be access granted at some point this morning. No word so far, and there have been other journalists who have also joined here this morning, but no access being granted so far. It is not clear when exactly the office is going to allow for some media interaction. But I also went into this adjacent building. Now, those who use the stretch will be familiar with this building. It's a bit ramshackle. I am told it is private property, though it is adjacent to the office of the former president. May his soul rest in peace. In fact, you would notice that some cars of the National Democratic Congress are parked within the premises, which I am told is the norm. It happens from time to time. Now, there is a gentleman we're going to be speaking to in a bit, Yusuf Jawon. He's a bit camera shy, but we're going to get interactive with him. He has lived within this premises for a year, and he'll be telling us a bit about how he experienced former President Rawlings. In fact, he's been intimating to me that he never got to meet the president personally, but indeed from time to time he would see the convoy of the president entering his office and then leaving it, and he has some fond memories that hopefully we can get his camera shy self to come out and tell us. But this is the adjacent property to the office, and I've been interacting with some of the people here. The only sad aspect, no one wants to go live on camera, but it's a morose atmosphere. Everyone is sorrowful. Everyone is sad that indeed this has happened to the former president, who actually passed on to glory only yesterday at the age of 73. We're trying to get interactive, but it appears the person who agreed to speak to us is now camera shy. But here we are at the Ridge residence, or the Ridge office, I should say, not the main residence of the former president, John Rawlings. As and when we get more information, we'll bring that to our viewers live from here. Mama V, over to you.